You're listening to Miss Style, Strength, and Grace with Deidra Murphy. This is your one-stop shop for style, fashion, health, and fitness. Deidra's passion is to help empower women to reach their fullest potential, both inside and out. Deidra and her guests will be discussing how to develop your style, health, and lifestyle hacks to energize your day and inspire you to keep reaching higher levels of success. Deidra is a professional fashion stylist, health guru, and Mrs. Washington 2017. It's time to get open and honest with Deidra.
Well, hello and welcome to another episode today. I called today's episode 10 lessons from 13 miles, but don't worry, I'm not making you run 13 miles today or anytime actually, but maybe you're listening to this on your run or as you're working out. So hopefully this inspires you a little bit to keep pushing heavier and harder and just put one foot in front of the other. But for those of you that follow me on not only the podcast, but on social media, Instagram, Facebook, whatever, a lot of you know I just ran my first half marathon. And I say first because who knows, maybe I'll do another one. Maybe I'll push towards a full marathon one day. I don't know. But let's just say I'm not done with pushing myself around in a good way. But I finished in under 3 hours. That was my goal. It was closer to 2.5 hours, which I'm super proud of. That means I was running a little over 11 minutes per mile. I kept it slow the first half and kind of upped my pace a little bit on the second half, which is apparently why they call it a negative split. It was called the negative split half marathon in Spokane, Washington. And that term negative split is a type of running, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but it's a tactic that runners use, especially for a long run where they pace themselves a little bit slower the first half so then they can push themselves a little bit heavier and faster on the second half. So anyway, I am still very sore. It was only 3 days ago at this point. And side note, I feel like I'm walking around like my dear old grandpa Osborne. He was actually born in the 20s and he was born, I don't know what they call it, but basically butt first. And so he was folded in half when he came out of my great grandmother. And it caused numerous complications. Later in life, he ended up eventually having a hip replacement surgery. He's since passed on, but dear old grandpa waddled around and it was always, just a source. He was very, very okay and comical about it. Like he had learned to joke about it and he knew that he was, always walking around and waddling like a funny little old man. And he was only about 5'3", 5'4". So it made for a good source of laughter in our family. But anyway, I texted my mom and my brother the other day saying like, I feel like dear old grandpa waddling around today. But anyway, long story short, well, again, I say that a lot, but it's never really true. And I wanted to do this half marathon to really push myself. Backstory is I've never been able to run the mile or a mile without stopping in both middle school and high school. So, you're in those grades, you have to do the testing to see where you're at in comparison with other students across the state and you get timed. And I could not physically do 1 mile without stopping and walking. I would usually alternate between like running and walking around the straights and running the curves on the track in high school. Even in middle school, I had such issues with running that my doctor diagnosed me with exercise-induced asthma, even putting me on an inhaler for any time in PE so that I could just complete the programs that we were doing in the PE classes. I was lucky in high school if I could get a mile in under 15 minutes. I was like, woo, I got it under 15. I didn't start doing more running and cardio longer trainings until the last few years because of training again for Mrs. Washington and incorporating a little bit of that. Granted, I would much rather lift weights or do some sort of HIIT style, burst style exercise for like 15, 20 minutes than run for a mile. And if you haven't yet, check out my podcast about how to work out smarter, not harder. I'll put that in today's show notes so you can listen to that, how you can work out in a shorter duration of time and get more accomplished. But anyway, I especially started upping my cardio sessions when I was prepping for Mrs. America this very last summer in 2017. After I won Mrs. Washington in May of 2017, I knew I was headed to Mrs. America in August. So I upped my cardio sessions to at least 3 times a week. And I was usually running about 3 miles, or a little bit over that sometimes, which if you're a runner, you know that's about a 5K. So if you hear that term 5K, it really means about 3 1/3 miles. So I'd already pushed myself to that level of resistance, which I thought was amazing. And I didn't realize that I could actually run for longer than a mile until I was visiting some friends. And I stayed the night with them, and they lived across the street from a school. And that morning I got up and I ran around that school's track as my exercise that day. And I just was like, I'm just going to run until I can't anymore. And I had my Nike app going on my phone just to track myself and see like, hey, how far did I run? And all the laps combined, it was over 3 miles. And I was like, whoa, I just did 3 miles and I didn't stop, and I'm not dead. Wow. Okay. Anyway, so after Mrs. America, and I got to the best shape of my life. Granted, I'm not at that anymore, but I don't want to be at 10% body fat anymore. And if you haven't listened yet, I have a different podcast about why I'm choosing to incorporate more fats in my diet because of my sex hormones and my estrogen levels and anything like that. So I'll link that show as well. And my husband and I sit down every year, usually in November before the crazy holidays start, and we like to map out some goals for the following year. We map out goals from everything for our personal lives to our marriage to just like bucket list things to our businesses. And we close ourselves off from the world, put our phones on airplane mode, and we just hash away at our goal planning and type it all out and make sure we have action steps too. So it's not just like, oh, I want to run a marathon. Okay, well, how do I do that? So that was one of my goals. I was like, well, I want to push myself physically. And I'd had a lot of people tell me, oh, you should do like a bikini show or a physical bodybuilding competition. And I thought to myself, no, I don't want to do that. I've already stressed my hormones out to the max by having way too little of fat intake in my diet. And it's not sustainable. And I didn't want to go that route again, but I was like, what can I do to push myself? And my husband actually mentioned the idea of doing some sort of race or marathon. And I was like, well, I'm already running a 5K pretty regularly. Why not push myself to the next level and just do a half marathon? Seems like the logical choice, right? But as I started thinking about it, I've never actually done an organized race of any sorts. So once I made that a goal of, okay, I'm going to do a half marathon, then I started to research, and I found one in Washington. So I based my pick for a half marathon based on location and date and what time of year it was going to be. This particular one in Spokane that I ended up doing was in April. So I knew it wasn't going to be super duper hot. That was a big issue for me. I also wanted it to be before I headed off to Paris again, because I knew being gone for over a week in a foreign country, I wasn't necessarily going to get my long runs in, and I didn't want to set myself back on my training program and then come back and then have to like rebuild up to my stamina just to get ready for the race. And so those are the biggest factors. And I wanted to make sure it was like soon enough that I didn't lose momentum going into it, but also not too far away where I'd have to kind of start from the beginning for my training protocol. And so I found this one called the Negative Split in Spokane, which for me, that's only about a 2-hour drive away. I'm familiar with Spokane. I lived up there for about 4.5, 5 years during college, as well as stayed after college. And I decided to also turn the race into a fundraiser for the Victoria Siegel Foundation, which is the national charity of Mrs. America. So by January, I had already had this goal. I'd already registered, made my commitment to this program. I downloaded a novice training schedule from a running trainer called Hal Higdon, and that was all just based on a friend's recommendation. Since I was already at the 3 miles a day mark, I was about a month ahead in his 12-week training schedule. I stuck to the schedule, modifying if needed. I still got in weight and resistance training at least 4 days a week, which I wouldn't recommend to just start lifting weights at the same time as training for a marathon or a run, unless you are already used to lifting consistently. So my body was already used to working out and lifting 4 or 5 days a week. I kind of just stayed at that and started incorporating running on different non-lifting days. So every week, at least one day that week, I would pick a long run day. It was usually on the weekends, and I just kept adding on a mile per week. So soon I got to the 5 miles in one run, and I was like, wow, then 6 and so on. In his program, he only has you run 10 miles once. I ended up running 10 miles twice on my training. And then the last week before the marathon, the farthest you run is actually 4 miles. And then each day you taper down, and then you give your body rest the 2 days prior to the marathon or half marathon. And then you just go and run. And Sunday morning before the race came, I did it, or Sunday the morning of the race, I completed it. I ran 13.1 miles, and you never know how hard you can really push yourself until you have no other choice. And I decided to run the race without music or headphones on or anything. And it really gave me a time to have some internal reflection, and I came upon some big aha moments. Monday after the race, I sat down again for some more self-reflection as far as, what did this training, the race, the run, and this milestone teach me? What did I learn about myself? So I came up with my 10 biggest life lessons from 13 miles, and I wanted to share them with you today. So number 1, I've learned you don't need the fanciest equipment. All you need is some gym shoes, maybe a hoodie, and you've got it. You don't even need fancy insoles, especially those stores where you go in and they're like, oh, we're going to measure your gait and your walk and your stride and how much pressure you pinpoints on your feet and blah, blah, blah. It's all just a sales tactic, honestly, and you don't really need it. I mean, looking back, I probably should have gotten a newer pair of shoes about a month prior to the marathon and broken them in. But, by the time I thought about it, it was only about a week out, and I didn't want to get a brand new pair of shoes and have to break them in and possibly deal with blisters and soreness leading up to the race. So I didn't have any fancy equipment, and I just went and did it with my 2-year-old gym sneakers, my fancy dancy hot pink Nikes. You don't even need a gym. No gym membership required. Just get out there and do it. You don't even need good weather. On some of my long runs, I was doing them on really wet, chilly, and windy end of winter days. And these actually prepped me for the actual race day, since on that morning I saw everything from chilly wind gusts to rain. It didn't snow, thankfully, but you don't put it past Spokane. I remember when I was there for my freshman year of college, it was April 1st, because I remember being April Fool's Day, and it snowed in Spokane. It's higher in elevation. And I remember calling my mom being like, April Fools, it's snowing here. And she laughed. And I said, no, for reals, it's actually snowing outside. Didn't really stick, but moral of the story, it was snowing. And I didn't even have like the latest headphones or earbuds or Beats connected to my head, or my phone for that matter. I ran the race without any technology and learned to be quiet with my own thoughts, taking in the time to clear my head, even possibly chatting with people along the way that might be at a similar pace to mine. Number 2, I learned to listen to my body. About a month away from the race day, I noticed my hips were starting to hurt as I passed the 7-mile mark on my long runs. And one day I was supposed to run 8 miles, but I ended up only running 6. It was okay. It was better to listen to my body and take it a bit easier in that moment in order to avoid the risk of injury later to the run and closer to the run. Number 3, I've learned to stay in my own lane. It didn't matter to me how fast someone else was running. I just needed to set my own pace and stay at a pace that was comfortable for me. I've learned too that when you're doing a long distance run, it's actually better to run at a kind of conversational pace, something where you can still keep up a conversation with somebody and not be huffing and puffing at the same time, but not so slow that you can sing a song. So you got to find that good pace for yourself. Mine is probably pretty slow. And I even signed up with a friend. Her name is Cherie, and we started out the race together, but we only ran together for about 5 minutes because she's faster than I am. And that's okay. I let her we both agreed from the beginning, like, you do you, I'll do me. If we stay together, great. If not, no worries. We'll each do our own pace and stay in our own lane. I even started my wave of the race at 8:45, and there was another wave of runners that started an hour after me. And a lot of those runners not only passed me, but even ended up lapping me during the 13 miles. But, it's okay. I'm not a professional runner, but I learned that I just needed to go at my own rate and finish. It didn't matter how long it was going to take me. I was just going to finish it. That was my whole goal. People kept asking me, like, leading up, like, what's your goal? What's your goal per time or per mile? And I was like, I don't care. I just want to finish. It's 13 miles. That's enough of a goal. Number 4, always be prepared. I don't know if I'm turning into a Boy Scout later on in life, but I just threw in a lot of things into my bag that I wasn't sure if I would need or not, but I'm so glad I had. I packed a lot of things just in case, but heck, it was my first marathon, okay? Give me a break. I'm so thankful I happened to throw in some hand warmer packets, the kind that you put in your gloves for like skiing or snowboarding. Yeah, I put those in my little knit gloves, and I was so thankful I did. Oh, and my like head warmer ear wrap thing, I threw that in very last minute, and I'm so glad that I had that over my ears because of the wind. I know for myself, if my ears get cold, I start to get a really bad headache, and that definitely helped protect my head and my ears, especially because it was under 50 degrees, which I'm definitely a fair weather runner apparently, and I like it a little bit warmer than that. But although I'm thankful it wasn't, 90 degrees out. So you got to find those little nuggets of goodness, right? And so it just taught me overall to throw in some things just in case and always be prepared. Number 5, I've learned it's okay to be scared and nervous. I remember the clock was ticking down to the 8:45 moment, and I did not want to approach the starting balloon area. They had this big giant balloon arch that you ran through to start. And the announcer kept getting down and down in minutes. First it was 10 minutes out, then 5, then 4. Now we're down less than a minute, and he's counting down from 10, and I was freaking out. And my husband almost had to like kick me in the butt to just get down and be near the archway so I could go under the arch and start my race. But it's okay to feel that sense of dread and that, oh crap, what did I just get myself into? How is this going to happen? But realize that fear and that fight or flight is an innate reaction. Give it a minute, realize it. It's okay, work through it, but still take action and just start. I simply had to put one foot in front of the other and just start moving once that whistle blew. Number 6, I've learned to pay attention to the world around me. As I mentioned earlier, I did not carry my phone or have headphones in. I thought I was going to go crazy running for that long without something to distract me, but it was actually just nice to soak in, not literally with the rain, but kind of soak in on the run, especially because all my training I had either ran outside listening to podcasts or music, or if I'd been running on the treadmill, I was catching up on my Grey's Anatomy shows, which I'm only on season 5 for those of you that are curious. But it was in Spokane, Washington, where I lived for almost 5 years during and after college. And there was places that I had never seen after 5 years. Bridges over the falls that I had never walked over, and beautiful home districts with Victorian era houses that I had never appreciated before. So if you're in Spokane, do check out the Browns Edition. That's where a lot of these beautiful Victorian-esque homes are located. And I just got to be alone with my thoughts. I came up with a lot of great ideas and worked through some personal struggles and issues that I've been pondering. And it's amazing how much stuff you can think about for almost 3 hours inside your own head while running. But you know what? I even got to connect with some total strangers. One lady towards the first half of my run was running at a similar pace to me, and we chatted about Spokane, the industry she works in as a paralegal, and briefly got to know one another. I wouldn't have been able to do that with earbuds in. I mean, granted, it also helped that she also didn't have any headphones in. So I knew I could actually chat with her a little bit. Lesson number 7, I've learned I am a finisher. I've been guilty of really negative self-talk, especially concerning the things I finish or don't finish for that matter. Shortly after quitting teaching, I told myself I was a quitter and that I was a flake because I quit my career, so-called career. In the long run, yes, it's been for the best, but in the beginning, I told myself that it was because I was a flake and I can't stick to things and I don't finish the things that I commit to. I've even told myself that I'm a failure simply because there are things that I've stopped doing or haven't finished in life. Have you ever been there? Has there been something that you've maybe started, but it wasn't the right fit, so you quit, but then you beat yourself up over it later on? But it's okay. After finishing 13 miles, I realized I am a finisher. I may just be at a different pace, but I'm dedicated to finishing projects and the things that I commit to. Nobody had to call me and tell me to get my long runs in each week. I went and finished them. I may have dreaded running in the rain and cold, but I finished. Maybe some of the days I didn't quite go as long as I had originally planned, but I finished the race. Number 8, I realized I'm stronger than I believe. You are stronger than you believe as well. My hips really started to hurt race day after mile 7 again, but I just forced myself to keep going, one foot in front of the other. Around mile 10, I had to stop and use the restroom. I know it actually happened a couple times, but thank goodness they had porta potties at every water station along the route. And as I walked out of the restroom, I realized it actually hurt my hips worse to walk. So at that moment, I realized my body is stronger than I believed, and I just needed to keep running, even if it was at a slow pace, because it actually hurt less to just run. Which leads me to my next point, number 9. I am slow, but it's okay. I had this realization on the day following my race, the day after, and it actually brought me to tears. I was sitting having some self-reflecting moments, and I realized that I am slow, but at least I do things at my own pace and I finish them. My whole life, I've gotten really down on myself, especially as a business owner and entrepreneur, thinking that I'm not where I should be yet. I think it comes down to comparison and comparing myself to people that are in a similar business as mine, thinking, well, why am I not at that point yet in my business? Why am I not where so-and-so is in their career? Thinking that I should be at point A or B by now. But it's okay. I'm going at a different pace. I may be slower, but I'm still headed to my own goal. And I want to encourage you to think about that. Maybe you're at a different place. Heck, maybe you're running a different race than somebody else, and just realize that you are going at your own pace. I know that I'm slow at everything I do, from washing my hair and getting ready to running. I'm just at a slower pace, but it's okay. I'm at a different pace, but I'm going forward. Forward momentum is what is important. Although I think my husband would wish that I could be faster at things, especially getting ready in the morning. He's like, come on, how long does it take to do your hair and makeup? I'm like, babe, you married me knowing how long it took. So let's just keep that in mind for a moment. At mile 11 or so, it hit me. I've just ran farther than I ever had in my life. If I can finish, I can get to mile 13. That's when I knew I would make it to the end. In all honesty, that morning of the race, I wasn't sure if I would finish. I was worried about finishing. Would my body give up on me? Would they have to call the paramedics and just find my body laying on the side of the grass going, I can't move. And I had such an emotional realization that I was crying tears of joy on Monday. And during this revelation, I even called my husband saying like, hey, do you have a minute? And I shared with him what was on my heart. And it was just because I was going through this emotional response the day after, realizing like, I'm a finisher. I do commit and finish things that I promise. I may just be slower, but I'm at my own pace, and that's okay. And it was actually he was actually thankful that I called and shared this with him, because I knew if I would have just told him about it later that night, I wasn't going to have the same emotional response that I was having right there in that moment, and that I wanted to share that experience with him. And it wasn't tears of sadness. It was honestly like a cathartic tear of joy, which brings me to my next lesson number 10, that even if I was dead last, I had the best cheering section at the finish line. Heck, being dead last just means that you have more people cheering you on when you do finish. But no matter what, like amount of time or how long it was going to take me to finish, I knew that my best friend, my husband, my spouse, my supporter was going to be there waiting with a big hug and a banana at the end of my race. Plus, he was there with my little fur baby, Tinkerbell, to cheer me on until the end. So who in your life is with you until the end? Always ready to cheer you on as you take those last few steps across the finish line? Make sure you give them a call or a hug, and do it today. What big moments or hurdles have you pushed beyond? What have they taught you in life? Even if you haven't done a physical race or a run, we are all running our own race and overcome our own obstacles. I challenge you to sit down, even if it's just for 10 minutes, and think about overcoming your obstacles and what things you've had to battle. I want you to think about it, reflect about it, maybe even journal about some hard times and things you have overcome. What did those moments teach you? How have you grown? In what ways did your reactions and decisions in that instance translate into other areas of your life? What can you learn from this and apply to other obstacles or difficulties? As always, if you have questions that you would love featured on a future podcast, be sure to email me, Deidra at stylebydeidra.com, as I will love to feature your question on a future episode, whether it's about health, fitness, fashion, nutrition, whatever, and I'll keep your questions anonymous, so there's no fear. If you are listening to this on your smartphone, be sure to take a screenshot and share it on Instagram and tag me at stylebydeidra, and I will tag you and share that in my own Instagram story as well. So thank you, and I hope that you have learned 10 lessons from 13 miles in under 30 minutes.
Hey ladies, thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoyed today's episode. To help empower more women, please be a doll and rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast. For show notes and other free resources we mentioned today, go to stylebydeidra.com.